Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. Ryan Nicodemus is at Burning Man this week, but don't worry, he'll be back on the next episode. We've got some special guests for you today on this free public minimal episode. We're also here with Malabama.
Hi.
TK Coleman is in the studio.
What it is.
We got the rest of our team here. And today we're going to be talking to Vanessa Bennett and John Kim, authors of this book, It's Not Me, It's You. And we're talking to a listener about relationship clutter. We also have an outstanding lightning round question, listener tip, and added value segment for you. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 358, where we answer 4 times the questions and dive deep into 7 simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free, because advertisements suck. Mal, where are we starting today?
Let's start with a question from Caitlin in Arkansas.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a Patreon subscriber from Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm in my mid-20s, and I've never been in a serious relationship. After spending years focused on building my career, I'm in a stable job, and I've done a lot of inner work on myself. How do I intentionally pursue finding a life partner without clinging to that pursuit? I want to start a relationship from a place of intentionality and health, not out of desperation or loneliness.
What a thoughtful question.
Yeah, right?
What a
Especially for
great
somebody in their
question.
mid-20s. Like, no offense, but that says something about Caitlin.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I would say to build a life. So I heard this when I was going through my rebirth, and I've always kept it in my back pocket. Where are you going, and then who's going with you? If you reverse the order, you'll be going alone. And I say that because I spent most of my 20s and 30s trying to find out who's going to come with me before where am I going. So I put the relationship or the person above my true north or my passion or what I wanted to do. And so what happens is then there's this stickiness in that dynamic where you're putting people on pedestals, you're hanging your happiness or life on the relationship. And also you go from, in my case, I went from mouth to nipple. I went from, someone who was building something and then found love and then lost myself. And the dynamic of the relationship changed where I was more like her son than her partner.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Vanessa, I find it, what's interesting here, and I think you allude to this in the book, but needing a relationship becomes a type of relationship clutter in a way. And I think what John is saying here is if we're heading in one direction and then someone else we meet, they drag us in a separate direction. When we talk about clutter as the minimalists, what we're really talking about things that get in the way.
Right.
Now, obviously, there's material clutter, and we talk a lot about that. But once you get past the stuff, there's all of this other clutter, mental clutter, emotional clutter, spiritual clutter, and of course, relationship clutter. And I think part of that clutter is thinking we need someone, a particular person or a type of person to complete me.
Sure.
And as you talk about in the book, that's a bit of a myth.
Yeah. I mean, I think actually I've never heard you say what you just said, John, and I love that. I'm probably going to steal that.
Do you
put
even
that with
know
content
me?
for later.
No,
I'm like, oh, noted. But yeah, I mean, I think what you said is spot on. I think it goes back to what you're saying, Joss, it's like, if we are worried about building ourselves and we're focusing on our passion, what lights us up, what kind of gets us up in the morning, right, and drives us, then what's probably going to happen is you're going to draw people into your sphere that complement you and that illuminate you in a way that it's going to be the opposite if what, like John's saying, you're worried about the people first and then yourself and your passion second, right? And so I do believe there is a clutter to the neediness that we have around relationships. Now, all that to say, I don't want to place blame on people because that's a societal thing. Right? That clutter comes to us through messaging that we get from society.
Absolutely.
That we are not complete unless we are partnered, right? That we are not complete until we have the big house and the fancy car. I mean, y'all know this well. It's what you guys talk about. And so I think it's really important. And I do think there has been a shift as of late where we do start to turn it on its head and kind of go at it like you said, John, which is like me and spirit first, and then allowing the rest to come in as a way to kind of just be an added bonus, but not be it.
Now, Vanessa,
Right.
don't people think that is selfish, though? Oh, but I should, of course, be subservient. I should follow their needs.
Of course.
But then what happens if we do that?
We're codependent as all hell, right? I mean, that's what that is. Like, and again, societally, I mean, we live in a codependent society. We are taught that relationships and love look, feel, sound, smell like codependency. You lose yourself in each other. You're complete when you meet somebody else, right? You are incomplete when you're on your own. So if we really want to start breaking these codependent patterns that we've got as a society, it's not that it's selfish. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. I think it's more selfish to go into a relationship when I don't really know who I am or have my own passions and expect the other person to complete me and make me happy than actually coming in knowing what makes me happy and then knowing that this person is just the cherry on the sundae. That feels a hell of a lot less selfish to me.
By the way, there's a reason why Vanessa is called the Coda Yoda on TikTok. Can you tell us your definition of codependency? Because I love
John's
how simple it
interviewing me
is.
now.
Oh, sorry. Let me give the baton back to you.
Yeah, I mean, look, for those who are listening, yeah, I mean, it's one of the big things I talk about, but it seems more complicated than it is, right? So the way I break it down is just simply this. If you're good, I'm good. If you're not good, I'm not good. That in and of itself is codependency, right? My emotional self is based outside of myself. My sense of worth is found outside of myself. My emotional state is based on somebody else's emotional state. And that is literally the country that we live in. I mean, that's how we look at love.
For many of us, that's how we've learned to do friendship.
Yep.
That's
all relationships.
That's literally how some people would define being empathetic.
Yes.
When you're down, I'm going to be a good friend and be down with you.
Yep.
Or else I overwhelm you with my joy. So how do you maintain your own joy when someone you love is right there next to you in a dark state without making them feel like you don't care?
Yeah, when you said that, like, overwhelm you with my joy, it just like hit me right in the heart.
Also, as a man, locker rooms, it's like if you're my boy, you go down, I'm coming down with you. There's like this weird kind of loyalty to it that is romanticized, but I don't think it's healthy. For me, it's like I'll give you my hand, not my life, right? So if you're going through a depression, of course I care about you. I want to know how I can support you, but I'm not also going to go through the depression as well because you're going through a depression. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like a practical situation. Let's say you show up at work or you show up at home and you say to a friend, hey, how's it going? And they tell you, my day's horrible. And they go on. And then they say, how about you? And the truth is that you just won the lottery.
Right.
But you don't want to be like, well, I'm doing fantastic. I'm a millionaire now.
Yeah.
What do you do in those kinds of moments?
I think there's a way for you to empathize and then but not rub it in their face. I think there's a difference between still maintaining your own joy and not feeling bad about the fact that you're in a good place and rubbing it in someone's faces, right? There's a line there. So in that practical example, it might be, maybe I don't in this moment talk about the fact that I just won the lottery, right? I can still talk about that maybe later, but maybe right now it just becomes, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm sorry that you're going through such a hard time. Period.
But also you can say you're doing well because you are doing well.
Yeah,
you
sure.
shouldn't have to hide that, right?
Right.
You don't have to say I just won $800 million,
right.
but
that's that line.
I'm having
right?
a good day, and that's my truth, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Now, in the book, the subtitle is "Break the Blame Cycle," and quite often, when I talk about the blame being immature, I mean it's the telltale sign of immaturity because it's a narcissistic trait as well. Whenever I am blaming everyone else for my problems, my offense, my desires, my inadequacies, and vocal quotes there, what I'm doing is I'm abdicating my own responsibility. I'm abdicating my own control. The very few things that I have control over, I'm now lending out to everyone else. And now I'm blaming TK. In a weird way, I'm giving him the power to offend me, to make me upset.
Yes.
right.
It doesn't mean that TK should be a jerk all the time because I can't be offended by him. No, of course. He can treat me kindly, but ultimately it is up to me to determine who ultimately I'm the one to blame. And I think I'm starting to understand that through reading the book. What you're talking about here is a type of personal responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this for me anyway, going through Al-Anon, a lot of this is very simple 12-step stuff, right? It's like, what is your 100%? Keeping your side of the street clean. And TK and I were talking a little bit offline before we started recording, that sometimes this doesn't go over well with many, but even as a couples therapist, I've had people come in for, like, let's say infidelity. And one of the first things I ask, after some rapport is built, and I don't do it in an attacking way, but a lot of times I will turn to the person who's been cheated on and ask them, what was your role in this? What was your part in this? And let me tell you, they don't like that.
They don't like that.
And I understand where that comes from, right? I get that. I've been victimized. But staying in the victimhood space for too long is another way we give our power away, right? And by the way, there's always two people in every dynamic. And so, no, you might not directly have caused the cheating. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes I'll hear, when somebody's at the place where they can own it, they might say something like, well, I noticed that things have shifted and I never said anything. I didn't speak up. The last 6 months, he's felt very distant or she's felt very distant or wasn't coming home. And I just didn't say anything. I just got resentful. Okay, well, that's your part to own, right? Again, I'm not saying you directly caused the cheating, but when we get to a place where we can own our 100%, that's when the real conversations start. Until then, it's just the blame game. I'm the victim, you're the perpetrator. And that keeps us in a really unhealthy pattern.
Which, by the way, is really hard to do.
Oh, totally.
And Vanessa and I struggle with it as well. Ownership is difficult, especially if that's not the pattern.
It's why it's one of the 12 steps, right? It's its own thing. It's tough.
I remember several years ago, Oprah popularized the DVD, The Secret.
Yeah.
And I do not want to get into the metaphysics of the law of attraction at all. But there was a phrase that came out of that became really popular, and it was, you create your own reality.
Yes.
And a lot of people started saying that, I create my own reality. I create my own reality. And there was a lot of backlash against that statement because it sounded to some as a very privileged sort of statement, right? There are people in this world that are deeply traumatized. Right. They've had really terrible things happen to them. And they're there asking, well, okay, I created my own reality. Someone attacked me. Someone hurt me. I created that. What would you say is the balance between self-ownership or personal responsibility and being honest about the bad things that happen to us that we didn't seem to invite?
It's a really good question, TK. You want to do that? You want me to take it?
I think when we're talking about the relationship and conflict in the relationship, you do, in a sense, create your reality from the day you choose to love someone. And then as you get to know them, because love is a daily choice, you don't have to be in something if you don't want to, if it doesn't work for you, right? So there is a responsibility and not blaming in that. But when it comes to people's story, like trauma, that is, we have been victims, like whether, there was sexual abuse or, bullying or all the stuff that happens to us because, no child enters adulthood unscarred. All of that, I think, is different than when you're in a relationship and you want to take ownership of how you love someone or what you bring to the table. Part of taking ownership is actually looking at your story, how you were wired, and following that string down and realizing why you behave and act the way that you do.
I want to build on that, though, and just say that even in those situations, because I know exactly what you're saying, the privilege around, I didn't create this reality, right? No one is saying that you are to blame for the traumatic things that happen in your life. By all means, absolutely not. No one is saying that. And what that statement is saying is that if that has been your reality, what will you do with it now? Right? So there still is a choice, even in the most victimized, to say, I'm going to stay in that place. Now, look, we could get into the whole mental health services. Are they offered to people in different areas and different income brackets? All that. That is valid and fair. And it's about saying, this has been my life up to this point. This is the deck of cards I've been dealt. What will I do with this hand, right? And that, I believe, rather than look at it as victim blaming, that's actually giving you power back. And if we look at it like, I'm going to take back control and play this hand, that feels a lot different than I'm to blame for the reality that's happened to me. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility is not the same thing as self-blame.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yes,
like that.
that's it.
Wait, let me steal that from you.
Yeah.
Write this
Write that
down.
down.
I stole it from you.
We're going to add an O to your name. It'll be TKO now with his quotes.
I love it. Caitlin, I'm going to send you a copy of this book. It's Not Me, It's You by John Kim and Vanessa Bennett. I think you will enjoy that book and you'll find some value in it as you are making this exploration. Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round.
Yes, indeed. You can text your questions and comments to 937-202-4654. We answer them throughout the week via our phones, but we answer some here on the podcast. Now, during the lightning round, here's what we do. We and our guests, we try to answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response, but not really. You can ramble a little bit.
I was like,
Professor Sean gives you 60 seconds on the clock, and you can answer this question within 60 seconds. And we try to tweeze out something pithy. We call them minimal maxims, and Podcast Sean puts them in the show notes so people can share our pithy answers on social media if they'd like. It looks like Casey has a question for us.
I have absolutely found my person, but we're not sure if we want to get legally married. What are the pros and cons of legal marriage?
Let's put 60 seconds on the clock for TK Coleman. What do you got for us, TK? Something pithy?
Completely unprepped, but let's do it. Contracts are for lawyers. Creativity is for lovers. I quote the economist Thomas Sowell, who said, "There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs." And how do you determine what trade-offs are right for you? You look within at your own preferences, your own principles, your own priorities. I call those the 3 Ps, and they will take you everywhere you need to go. You can't make good decisions in life by academically writing down the pros and cons on a sheet of paper, because those pros and cons have to be contextualized by what matters most to you. And that has to come from within. What are your preferences? What are your principles? What are your priorities? That'll let you know the trade-offs that you need to make.
We got 60 seconds on the clock for...
Jeez. Going with your answer. Can I just say...
For John Kim.
We put too much weight on the promise. Why do you want to get married? Why is that valuable to you? I would say hold this instead of grab it, and ask yourself what holding it looks like feeding birds. If you are holding, meaning with an open hand, and let the bird come to you, that's going to build legs of a relationship. If you're chasing after the bird to feed it, you're going to chase it away. So if you're using marriage to chase instead of hold, I don't think it's a good thing.
And what I like about your answer here is you're not saying marriage is good or bad, but it is not always the goal. My wife and I aren't married on paper, but I refer to her as my wife because culturally people understand that, right? In fact, we live apart half the time as well, which is also a weird cultural thing. People are like, oh my God, we were having dinner with someone one time. I'm still using his 60 seconds here. And I say, oh yeah, we live apart half the time. And someone said, no, don't do that. What are you talking about? No, I do that. I'm going to do that because I've realized the distance is what creates the desire in our... I got the buzzer. All right. We got 60 seconds on the clock for Vanessa Bennett.
God, I don't have anything pithy to say after these two. I feel like they said it all. But as somebody who myself, similar, not married, but live together, have a child, own a home, all the things... I mean, the perks are probably tax cuts, I guess. But again, what's your should, and why is there a should, and where does this should come from, right? Like, who is telling you that this is what your life should look like? And then you need to question that. This is a radical departure from what we've been told. I think generationally, we're finally breaking out of, we have to do things a certain way. And so I think marriage is just one of those. Having children is another one of those. Ask yourself where that should is coming from. Is it coming from you, or is it coming from external? And you and your partner just need to be kind of on the same page about it.
Yes, indeed. There are no shoulds, there are only coulds. And as soon as we realize that, it opens up all of the possibilities. You want to put 60 seconds up there for me? Since TK stole my pithy answer and reworded it, I actually stole this one and reworded something from our friend Seth Godin. Ooh. So contracts inform us about the past. Handshakes inform us about the future. So my wife and I don't have a specific contract with respect to our marriage, but if you look at famous marriages from the past, there are plenty of people who have been together and weren't married by the state, because it's not about, well, as soon as I have this contract, the contract says, oh, I've been screwed over in the past and I don't want you to screw me over again. And so we're going to sign this contract, TK. And what's fascinating is I don't have contracts with anyone we work with here, right? In fact, Matt Diavella, who directed our first 2 films, I don't have a contract with him. We had a handshake agreement every time.
That's amazing.
And the reason, and if, in fact, even we worked with Netflix, they sent me this like 80-page contract. I said, can you get this on 2 pages? And they're like, what? No one's ever asked us.
The lawyers' heads exploded.
Yeah. And I said, well, I don't want to sign something I don't understand. Let's have a handshake so we can work together going forward. That's 60 seconds.
Ooh.
Wow.
By the skin of his teeth.
Like a true alpha, he was like, not only did you steal my tweet, I'm going to take it back, slam dunk it before the shot clock's over. That's a boss.
Alabama, what else you got for us before we get to our simple living segments? And also, we're going to do another home tour segment coming up. What do you got for us in the meantime?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi guys, My name is Maria. I'm from Moscow, Russia. I have a bipolar disorder, and most of the time I don't have a lot of energy, so stuff kind of piles up. Whenever I do have it, I start decluttering, and I don't just get rid of things I don't need or like or haven't used in a while. I also ask myself, does this thing makes me feel better about myself or worse? For example, I'm good at cooking, and since I have to eat, I cook once a week or so, but mostly I live on takeouts and order-ins. And even though I always order healthy food and have a pretty good eating habits, I still feel guilty about not having home-cooked meals. I never wanted to cook in the first place, but having all those cooking stuff and not using it puts stress on me. It's 3 times a day struggle. So last month I said to myself, okay, I don't want to worry about that anymore. It makes me like myself less. So I got rid of most of my kitchenware and kept only few things essential to making eggs and coffee. I instantly felt better without all those pans and pots staring at me every time I enter my kitchen. I don't have that stress anymore. And while I don't recommend that particular kind of cleanup, I will definitely say to anyone with bipolar or depression that having only things that you like to use or just look at will make you feel so much better. I know that most of us think one day I'll get better and I finish that book or DIY project, but sometimes not doing that is what makes you closer to getting better. So throw it out, find it in your home. You don't want stuff dragging you down.
All right, y'all. Before we get to our added value segment this week, big thanks to our guests today, John Kim, Vanessa Bennett. Here's their new book. If you're watching the video version here, It's Not Me, It's You. And it's a book about breaking the blame cycle and relationshiping better. I love relationship as a verb. You can also check out their individual podcasts, the Angry Therapist podcast and Cheaper Than Therapy. We'll put a link to both of those in the show notes. Real quick, TK, for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. We just had our first ever Sunday Symposium. It was magical. Yaman was there. Our whole team was there. Ryan was on stage with us as well. We had a beautiful special guest. Amanda Montel was there. And we're doing our next one when this podcast comes out. It'll be next week. So less than a week away. And here's why I'm saying this. Last time we announced this on the podcast, the event sold out in less than a day. And so we're announcing this right now. You can head on over to theminimalists.com/tour. You can find tickets to the Sunday Symposium. Now, here's what we're doing. This theater that we have, Dynasty Typewriter, beautiful theater. It's only 200 seats. We did this intentionally. Smallest event we've done in like 7 or 8 years, TK. And that intimacy creates something special. We learned a lot from the first one. We're going to be doing a lot of different things. With the second one, we're trying to build a loving, dogma-free community. People who come back over and over, and new people who join the community and ebb in and out of our community. 100 free tickets available, 100 paid tickets available. If you can afford it, please donate for a ticket. You buy a ticket, it's a donation, and that helps us pay for the venue, helps us pay for our staff, but it also subsidizes the people who cannot afford a ticket. We want this to be open to everyone, no matter where you are on the socioeconomic spectrum. This is happening right now monthly in Los Angeles. What did you learn from that first event, TK?
Man, that everywhere you go, people want to connect. One of the interesting observations for me was how many people who were there that grew up in church, grew up in religious communities, and they still retain a sense of maybe moral values or spiritual values that they inherited from those religious communities, but they're no longer a part of those communities themselves and no longer desire to be a part of them, but they miss the part where you gather together with other people to talk about a common aspiration to live more intentional lives.
And that's why we called it Sunday Symposium. In fact, you were a bit worried, like, oh no, I don't want the connotation. We're doing this noon on Sundays.
I didn't like it at all when you first brought that up.
And now how do you feel?
Well, really quickly, I didn't like it at all because I felt like we should just go with something that happens on Friday night or Saturday night where people are having drinks, having fun, and just frame it as entertainment. By having it on Sunday, it's like, what does culture associate Sunday afternoon with? Going to church. And now we're going to have this framing of like, oh, an alternative to church. And people are going to think of it as some kind of religion or some kind of cult. And I didn't like that at all. But this event made me realize a couple of things. That number one, if we just do the Friday, Saturday night thing, it's like, we don't really have the opportunity to do what isn't being done. I think we can be good. I think we can create fun, but people are already doing that. I think by doing this on Sunday and accepting the challenge that comes with that framing, we have a chance to do something that isn't being done, because the need for this is based on the fact that lots of people are rejecting what's being done, and they've been rejecting it for a long time. And so people want to know, what can community look like outside of depending on a church that I don't want to go to?
So let's build this community together. SundaySymposium.com, where you can get your free tickets or the paid for tickets. Like I said, if you can afford it, help us pay for the venue, because Ryan and I lost a lot of money at the first one, and it's okay. We're trying to build this community, and you can help us at least break even with that. But even if you can't afford it, we're providing half the tickets for free. SundaySymposium.com. Let's build something special together. We'll have a special guest, some music, some conversation, some Q&A, a lot of love, a lot of dogma-free conversation. For our added value this week, I got a song for you. It's a guy named Knox. I stumbled across him on Instagram, TK, and it took me back to the oddies, sort of this indie rock upbeat vibe. And the song is called Sneakers, which is a double entendre because it's about, like, he said, I don't run around with sneakers, but like also people who sneak around behind your back, right? Yeah. And it's a song about relationship boundaries, about setting standards before you get into a relationship. You don't want to be 4 years in a relationship and then you start to set boundaries then. Of course, it's okay to reestablish boundaries, but the best time to set your boundaries is up front, and then you can change them together as the relationship continues. And it's also a song about self-love in a way. I'm not willing to tolerate this kind of behavior in a relationship. Enjoy this song. This is Sneakers by Knox. By the way, TK, we got a bunch more surprise questions on the private podcast this week, like, will my relationship fail if I don't love myself more than my partner? How do we avoid moving too fast in a relationship if there's a strong chemistry between us? At what point in a new relationship should you tell your partner you have a micro penis? Too bad Ryan isn't here to answer that one. No, we're going to get serious on that one, actually. And it's not really about that, but we talked to John and Vanessa about certain expectations we place on ourselves that make us miserable before we even start a relationship and make us afraid of being in a relationship. We're going to talk about that, plus a million more questions for Vanessa, John, TK, and myself. And if you want to hear all that, tell them what to do, Alabama.
Check out the Minimalist private podcast. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain immediate access to all of our archives, recordings of live events, weekly home tours, and our private community of thousands of open-minded minimizers like you. If you have a question or comment for our podcast, give us a call, 406-219-7839. Or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalist.com. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @TheMinimalists. To get our podcast show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list at theminimalist.com.
Thank you, Alabama. That's our show for today. On behalf of Ryan Nicodemus, TK Coleman, Alabama, Podcast Sean, Jordan No More, Professor Sean, Social Jess, Danny Unknown, Post-Production Peter, Emma the Immigrant, and the rest of our team. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn. And if you leave here today with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.